This is the Acer Travelmate P6 14AI, and if you're looking for a business laptop right now, this is not a bad pick. If you're looking for something that's going to be portable, easy to pack, and very lightweight, this laptop surprised me quite a bit. And a big part of the reason why is due to something that you will see on the lid of this machine, which is Acer Carbon Fiber. Yes, this laptop has a chassis made of carbon fiber, or at least part of the chassis is. Acer doesn't say exactly how much, and I suspect it's probably a fairly low percentage. And there's nothing about the laptop's looks, as you can see, that screams carbon fiber. No carbon fiber weave here. In fact, most of the laptop is a more traditional magnesium aluminum alloy, which has been used for a very long time in business laptops to keep the weight down. However, in that regard, it's extremely successful because this laptop, which has a 14-inch screen, only weighs about 2.3 pounds, and it measures only about 0.7 inches thick, although I actually think it's a little thinner than that specification suggests, because it seems like, based on my measurement, that there might be including the feet to some degree of this laptop, which you can see it has some kind of thick feet on the bottom for making sure it doesn't slide off a desk. Now, this is in any case an extremely light system. Now, this is not the lightest Windows laptop with a 14-inch display. The LG Gram laptops, for example, can be lighter in some situations, and the Acer ZenBooks with the Ceraluminum display lids are also quite light. I believe the latest ZenBook 14 Ceraluminum is about a tenth of a pound lighter than this. But in general, this is towards the lighter end of the spectrum, and you're probably not going to get many laptops that are going to feel substantially lighter than this Acer. And there's a lot of benefits to having that thin and light form factor, because you can see from me tossing this thing around, it is just an exceptionally easy laptop to move. You don't have to worry about picking it up off a desk quickly. If you're rushing out to a meeting, just grab it and go, no problem. However, it's not just the lightweight which I like about this laptop. No, it's the combination of the lightweight and the fact that this laptop feels nice, which is something that is not the case for a lot of thin and light laptops, even thin and light business laptops. When I open this laptop, it feels very solid. The display lid doesn't really flex much at all. You can slightly see that it has a little bit of flex to it. It's not perfectly rigid. Not really so much that you would notice. I really have to be paying attention to notice the flex that is in this machine. And that's not the case for a lot of thin and light Windows laptops. They oftentimes can feel a little bit flimsy. I feel like the LG Gram series is particularly bad for that. It is mil-spec tested, by the way, but those testing specifications can be a little bit flexible, so I wouldn't put too much stock into that. Now, with that said, it's not all sunshine and roses with this laptop. As you might be able to see from my camera going across it, there's quite a few fingerprints here. This from me handling it, right? This is a black laptop, as you can see, matte black laptop, and like a lot of systems that are this color, it does tend to show fingerprints. And in fact, I think the material kind of absorbs fingerprints a bit more than you would expect, which is actually pretty common with these laptops that have a magnesium alloy sort of build. I was also noticing, and you may see this too in the B-roll of this video, that there are some scratches in this laptop. They're not super noticeable, but when you really put the light to it, you can start to see those show up. And so I imagine this is going to accumulate some scratches over time. This lid is not the most scratch-resistant material. But of course, if that bothers you, you might want to look at some of the Dell and HP business laptops, which are more likely to use an aluminum lid that's going to be more scratch-resistant. Now, I spent quite a bit of time talking about the design because I think it's an important factor for why I like this laptop. It is thin and light, it feels durable and rigid, and all that combined just makes it feel like it would be a really good companion for travel. The keyboard is also quite good with long key travel, a good tactile feel, and a little bit of audible feedback. It's not an amazing mechanical keyboard or anything like that, but as laptop keyboards go, it's one of the better ones. The touchpad is less remarkable. It's very typical for a Windows laptop these days, but Windows touchpads have come a long way in the last few years, so it's still quite enjoyable to use, just not as good as you would find on, say, a MacBook Air or MacBook Pro. Another thing you'll notice about the chassis as you look around it is there's quite a bit of connectivity on this laptop. You've got two Thunderbolt/USB-C ports, USB-A, HDMI on one side, and then on the other side you've got another USB-A, along with the 3.5mm audio jack. The laptop does not have an Ethernet port because it would be a little bit too thick to fit on the laptop, but it does ship with a USB-C to Ethernet adapter in the box, which is nice to see. Now, with the design out of the way, let's talk a little bit about the other specifications. They are fairly typical for this kind of laptop. An Intel Core Ultra 7 258V processor, 32GB of memory, a 1TB M.2 PCIe 4.0 SSD, and integrated graphics, Intel Arc 140V graphics to be precise. The Intel Core Ultra 7 258V is a pretty well-known quantity at this point and has good performance overall. Although if you compare it to something like a MacBook Air or some of the better Ryzen processors, it does tend to fall behind a little bit in the single core and multi-core performance. Still, this level of performance is going to be perfectly fine, not only for business travel, but a lot of lighter examples of more demanding tasks. If you want to edit photos, if you want to edit video, if you're working in 1080p or 4K video, for example, with fewer clips, using some proxy clips, this is perfectly fine. Even the gaming performance actually is something to point out, because I don't think people quite understand how good Intel Arc 140V graphics is. It is extremely competitive with anything AMD has. In some cases, the Intel Arc 140V can beat AMD Radeon 890M graphics, depending on the particular implementation in the laptop that you find those integrated GPUs in. And certainly compared to the lower end Radeon graphics like the 860M, Intel Arc 140V tends to have an advantage. So if you want to do some basic 3D workloads, play some games every now and then on this laptop, it can actually handle it pretty well. The laptop only has a 65 watt-hour battery, which these days is kind of a mediocre size, but it still managed to last 17 hours in a video playback test, looping a video continuously, locally hosted by the way. Now in everyday apps like Word and browsing the web, you will generally receive a little bit less battery life, but as long as you're not hammering the performance of the system too hard, you can easily get through a workday with quite a bit of charge left in the tank. And for a lot of people, if you're not using the laptop all day, every day, you're going to be able to go 2 or 3 days before you need to charge this laptop up. Now, one potential downside to note, however, is the display. This is a 14-inch IPS LCD 1920 by 1200 resolution with a 60 Hz refresh rate. Pretty standard stuff, even pretty disappointing stuff for a laptop sold in 2025. OLED displays are now being seen on laptops all the way down to $600 or $700, so this is going to not really set anyone's hair on fire. And like most IPS LCD displays, the contrast can be pretty dull and flat. The colors are fine, the sharpness is great, and the brightness is also quite good, but it just doesn't have that rich and immersive feel of an OLED display. Now, whether or not this matters, it depends again on your use case, because this is meant to be a business travel laptop. One thing you will notice is I have a window here that is lighting me. It's right over here. It's a fairly large window, and as I move this laptop back and forth, you're going to see some of that reflection, but it is pretty diffuse, right? And this is a pretty bad lighting scenario for using the laptop. It is, I would say, a semi-gloss coat. You can still sort of see the edges of the window, or at least I can see them as I tilt this laptop display around, but it is in general very usable in a wide variety of lighting situations. And that's really important for a business travel laptop, because of course when you're traveling, you're not always going to be able to control the lighting in a room. You might be at an airport or at a coffee shop and have absolutely no say in what the lighting is like. So in that regard, the display is good, but if you want to play games and watch movies and have them really pop off the screen, this is not going to be laptop forward. Also, like I said, 60 Hz refresh rate, and that is actually maybe the more disappointing thing, because it means overall the laptop doesn't feel as smooth as a laptop that has 120 Hz refresh rate. And that is something that, to me, it bothers me even in Windows desktop apps. I can, sort of notice when that refresh rate is lower, and I prefer to see 120 Hz. And I think the only other specification to mention is the webcam. It does have a 2880 by 1800 resolution webcam, which sounds great, but don't get too excited. I found that the image quality from it was nothing remarkable, not any better than any of the other 1080p webcams that are commonly available in business laptops these days. It does have a physical privacy shutter and support for Windows Hello facial recognition login, but that is pretty common for a business laptop as well. There's a fingerprint reader too, and again, that is a feature that basically all business travel laptops are going to offer. Now, on the whole, I really like this laptop, and it's mostly because of that design. Now, I will be real with you, I would probably buy a ThinkPad instead. I'm a longtime ThinkPad fan, and the X1 Carbon is kind of my go-to choice for a business travel laptop if it's not a MacBook Air. But I was surprised by how much I like this and how close it got to convincing me that maybe I would want to buy something like this instead of the ThinkPad. It in many regards feels very similar. It has a nice keyboard. It has a very rigid but light chassis. It has a bright, sharp, but not particularly contrasty display. And so with it being so similar in a lot of regards, you have to ask about the price. How much does this thing cost? Well, this laptop retails at an MSRP of $2,000, but online you can expect to more commonly pay around $1780, which is a lot for a laptop that has an Intel Core Ultra 7258V. But again, this is a business laptop, and most of the systems in this category are more expensive. If you go for a Lenovo X1 Carbon Gen 14 Aura Edition, you could end up paying over $2,500 for equivalent specifications. And if you look at the Dell Pro 14 Plus or the HP ProBook series, those laptops also tend to be a few $100s more expensive with equivalent specifications. So that is the Acer Travelmate P6 14AI. Overall, I do recommend this if you want a business travel laptop that is light, feels durable, and has a nice keyboard with good connectivity, all for a price that is under $2,000. It is definitely not the fastest laptop you can get for less than $2,000, no doubt about it, but it is among the lightest, most portable, and has really good battery life. And, well, that's kind of what you want from a business travel laptop, right? Now, with that said, I know that convincing people to buy this over a Lenovo ThinkPad is quite a tall order. I'd like to know a little bit more about what you're thinking in the comments. Would you actually consider going with an Acer Travelmate over one of those somewhat better known brands? Maybe opting for a slightly lower price to get the same specifications, or do you just want to stick with the ThinkPad? Let me know your thoughts. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.